Ryan Aho here, bringing you episode number 50. Bert, 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks. We got a whole year, but episode number 50 here of the One to Go Show. And, of course, the One to Go Show brought to us by our friends over at Weir's Machine. We're going to start out with a week in review. Then we always start out there, like to talk about not a lot of racing in the area, but the guys over at Weir's Machine, whether it's local, national, wherever it is, they sell parts everywhere. You know, they got any trinket you can imagine. You know, Puka's all raving about this, cornhole deal. It's like, I'm a racer, that's all fine and good. Maybe the fans like that deal, but it's just another example of them expanding themselves over at Weir's Machine. As a racer, I had a lot of different stuffs. I mean, I had bird cages, all kinds of brackets, J-bars, you name it. But those folks over at Weir's Machine do a great job. So this is the time of year. Things are kind of wrapping up here, and people are going to be getting ready for the 2021 season. So give Chad and the guys a call over at Weir's Machine to get anything you need to get your car ready for next year. But, Bert, we're going to start out with a week in review. Not a lot of racing going on, but something, we all kind of like cheaters. You had a cheaters night over there in Wisconsin. Talk about that a little bit.
141 Speedway, they had a cheaters night, and I was interested to see what kind of contraptions and gimmicks that some of these drivers would come up with for their cars. And they had 6 divisions of racing and only 44 cars in the 6 divisions. So apparently a lot of the drivers didn't want to go through all the extra work to put together a cheaters package.
Bert, maybe they had 44 guys that didn't have to change anything. I'm just saying, I don't know. I'm not over there. I don't know.
And there was another track, with not too far away from 141, Gravity Park. They had a special also, and they had over 100 cars at that show. But they could race their normal cars. They didn't have to cheat them up. Some of the interesting things were, one driver in the stock car division, it looked like he just took a big piece of plywood and put it on the roof of his car, fastened it to try to hold him in the corners. One of the stock car drivers had a big sprint car wing on his car. Those always seem to do the best in these cheater races. It was interesting. Larry Richards, who races a Grand National car, he decked his car out. He had sideboards down the complete side, had the big spoiler in the back, and a sideboard on the other side of the car, just over the rear deck, along the rear deck. So he went the complete 80s route and did it up. And obviously he won both features. Actually, because they only had 44 cars, they decided to run a double show. So they ran a set of heat races for each division, feature, and then they did it all over again. They just inverted the heat race lineups and did it all over again. It was also interesting. Brazen Bennett brought his asphalt late model and raced with the IMCA stock cars. Well, I should probably just say stock cars because they're not IMCA legal. But he actually ran pretty well. I'm assuming he had dirt tires on it. I don't know for sure. As we've talked a lot on the show, though, sometimes when you're racing on a dirt track, it's like racing on an asphalt track. But he actually ran really well. So, I wasn't there, but I watched it on Flow, and it was cool seeing one of the Jason Sharapata, a modified driver. He didn't have a sprint car wing, but he had like a big panel on the top of his roof, and then on the front of his car he had another like a panel. So it was cool to see something different. I'm sure they wish that they would have had more cars there, but it was the first time that they did something like this. I think it's cool to do it, maybe once a year, just let the drivers have fun and see what they can come up with. Some of the stock car drivers, they took the fenders off their cars, and they probably had, because the IMCA tires, they probably had some Wasota style tires because they have a lot better bite than the IMCA or the IMCA tires do. So, I mean, overall, I mean, there's a lack of cars, but I mean, it was fun to watch.
How was the fan count?
I'm not sure what the fan count was like. I didn't pay attention to. There was a stiff wind blowing, so you know, that may have scared some people away too, because actually that track's not too far away from Lake Michigan, so it can get a little bit colder.
Is it right on the lake? I mean, how close is it to Lake Michigan?
It's not right on the lake. It's a little bit north of Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which is pretty much right on the lake. I remember when I was on MJ McBride's pit crew, that's when Manitowoc would race Wednesday nights, and I went with him, and he said, you know, you can leave Shawano and you get to Manitowoc, and it'll be 20 degrees cooler than what it is in Shawano. So
yeah, I had that in Superior. I'd be, well, an hour and a half roughly north of Superior up in Chisholm, Minnesota, where I lived, and it'd be 80 in the middle of the summer. I'd have shorts on and stuff. I'd get down to Superior. It's 45 degrees. I'm like, oh, my goodness. And you don't make that mistake too many times, I can tell you that. So kind of a neat deal, though. And it kind of reminds me, you sent a picture over of Steve Larson a few years back. He was there at a Cheaters night, and I think he had a sprint car wing on his late model, didn't he? And he just killed him. So,
yeah,
kind of
he started in the back and just killed him.
Right. So that's kind of a neat deal. The drivers kind of like doing that kind of stuff, and you kind of see that. And like Hot Carl went down last week to that deal down in Texas. That I don't remember exactly what it was called. I don't have it in front of me, but that was kind of a glorified Cheaters Enduro night. Totally a little different deal, but all kinds of contraptions. And I didn't mention on last week's show, but Hot Carl, him and Tito were the flag man. They got to throw the green flag to start that deal. So that kind of stuff, I mean, hats off to them guys doing something different to try to get creative, to get some people excited about racing. You know, hey, maybe they were light on cars, but as long as it got some people excited about it, we're talking about it. They did a good job there. So hats off to the folks for getting that done. But we actually did have
I mean,
go ahead.
That's the only racing that we had on this side of the state, and I think now we're pretty much done racing on this side of the state. But out west, well, actually in Minnesota, you guys had some racing over this past weekend.
They did. You know, Ogilvie Speedway had the Fall Classic over there. In the week before, I was over in Madison, and it was cold. I mean, it was crazy cold. And I'm like, oh, man, you know, if it's that cold, I wonder how this deal is going to turn out. Well, Mother Nature cooperated, and it was 75, almost 80 degrees. It was beautiful. The first day, they had 312 cars. It's listed 313, but Chris Steppen is a good buddy with Scott Greer from up in Canada, and I think he posted them on the lineups kind of like an honorary inside joke deal because Scott Greer was not there, I don't believe. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty positive. But they had him down in the heat. They had him down in the B main as another participant, so that way he can officially have never missed a Fall Classic. I think that's how that works. So, but 313 day one, day two, they added in the smash them up late. I mean the limited late models, and they had 325 cars total. And you know the racing and the heat races. I'm like, oh boy, it's gonna be a long weekend. It just dry, kind of one laney, not real excited. There was a few good heats. I think probably the shining moment, I guess, to me in the heat race is Giassi looped it in turn one. And I don't know if there was a little help there or whatever, but he ended up getting turned around. He came from dead last, got to fourth, which at least got him into the A main, salvaged the weekend, and he made the most out of it the second day. But the features is bad. You know, I thought the heats were kind of not so good. I just wasn't all that excited about the heats. But the features, most of them were pretty darn good. You know, we'll start with the lates because that one wasn't all that great. Bert, did you get a chance to watch any of that from Ogilvie?
Yeah, I did watch several of the features. I did watch the late model feature. And, you know, I didn't watch it live. I watched it after the fact. So I knew actually what happened, you know, before I watched it. And as I'm watching it, you know, Jesse Glenn's is leading and leading and leading. It's like, you know, the track rubber down and there's no passing. So how can you lose when the track's rubber down? And I don't know if he couldn't keep his car down low, but he drifted. Well, the thing is, I thought, well, maybe he tried to, because he was in heavy traffic, but I think the track was such that it didn't matter as long as you just stayed in line. not tried to pass anybody. Well, listen to me trying to tell a driver how to how to race. But it looked like, as long as you stayed in line, make Door try to pass you for the lead. If he passes you for the lead, just shake his hand afterwards and say good job. But when he got passed, he drifted high, and the car that was actually in front of him had also drifted a little high. So I'm not quite sure why he went high. And then even after that, he was in second, and then he drifted high again, and Giassi got by him. And then I can't remember exactly, but if it was on a restart or something, then he got contact with some other cars and he got shuffled back a little bit further. You don't see that from Jesse Glenz every day.
I messaged him on Facebook, and I'm like, did something break? Because I literally, it looked to me like he maybe lost his brakes, because the car just took off on him a couple times. And he's like, no, he goes, just not a good night. He says, he goes, I backpedaled a little bit, then I had contact with the 58 there, AJ Demo. Yep. I think he ended up cutting the tire down. He ended up DNFing the whole deal.
Okay.
And I'm thinking in my mind, Jesse, man, like, you're leading. It's one lane rubber. Like, literally one lane. The first 15 to 18 laps was pretty good. There was some passing because Giassi came from 14th to 2nd. And so before it locked on rubber, he charged his way up to the front. Hell of a run there for Nitro. But the fact is, you get the lead on that deal on a rubber down track. The first thing I think he did, he tried to pass that lapper on the outside, and Door snuck right by him. And then I don't know if he was waving to his new wife, or I'm not sure what he was doing there. We love you, man, but it's like, we got to pick on him because you don't make the mistakes very often, because it's like, fool me once, shame on me, or shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. He pushed up. I don't know if he tried to lane up or what he was doing, but he ended up losing spots again, and pretty soon he got contact, and just a complete meltdown by Jesse Glenz there. But patdoar, another invitational win for the Double One Express. So great invitational season for patdoar. He's on top of the One to Go Show power rankings, as you see. So great end of the year for patdoar. So any more on the late models there?
No, not on the late models.
I do have one more thing on the late models.
Okay.
So Sabraski was driving.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah, Sabraski's driving Provenzino's car, and in the heat race, you could tell he was, he was okay. He finished mid-pack. I think he got maybe 5th in the heat. I can't remember exactly, but he was okay. And in the feature, right away, there was contact between. It was Sam Mars and Jeff Provenzino. There was a little contact, and I looked and I couldn't quite pick it out from what I heard, and I didn't quite see it. It sounds like Sam maybe got a little crossed up. Jeff got into him while Shane was right behind Jeff. So they were all in that incident together, 28, 28, 28, right? Triple threat right there. I think he kind of stayed off Jeff, but then he hit the brake so hard that Shaw got into the back of Sabraski, ripped the rear bumper right off the car. Next thing you know, he's done, can't race without a rear bumper. Yeah. So they DQ'd him, and they blamed the incident on Jeff. And at first I'm like, oh, man, Jeff put Sabraski in the car, and Jeff took them both out. But I don't think it was that way. I think there was just a little scrambling in front of him, and it just, kind of happened or whatever. I don't think Jeff was maybe the culprit on that deal, but he got the call. But Sabraski said, it was fun. He goes, I'd like to get back in it. We didn't really, I wish I could have seen what I could have done with it. Not that he would have won from where he was, but he's a hell of a driver. It would have been fun to see. So speaking of Sabraski, let's roll into the modified.
Yep.
Because we talked about Beamel having a little contact with Glenz. Now, I'm wondering if Shane sent him a bill. Professor Sabraski gave A.J. Demel a schooling. It was artwork. It was beautiful, right? He caught him. So Demel was probably a little quicker. He got away on the top, got into lap traffic, and Sabraski methodically tracks him down, shows his nose underneath him with 2 to go. And what does Demel do? I'm going to go down here where Shane was. And where does Shane go? Right where Demel was, and drove right by him off of 4 for the win on the top. It's like, oh, my God, he suckered him right out of his line. And Demel will probably watch that one and not be real happy, because had he stayed up top and just kept charging 3 and 4, I think he wins that race. I think if he charges.
I don't know, because Sabraski was the only one who could make up ground on the bottom. If you listen to the announcer at the end, every lap they would say how many second lead Demo had, and Sabraski was cutting into that every lap when he was running the low side and Demo was running the high side. But you're right. As soon as Demo saw Sabraski's nose, he dropped down to the bottom. But as I'm watching that, I'm thinking to myself, that's the right thing to do. You take his lane away. But I mean, you and Puka talk about Sabraski a lot, and as I watch him more, I can understand why.
Here's the deal. He was cutting into his lead in lap traffic, and honestly, about the last 5-6 laps there, I believe that AJ just got ultra conservative. He wasn't charging a corner. He was being really patient, and that's why you don't see him bang up his stuff very often. You don't see him shred a lot of ting. You don't see him getting in a lot of wrecks because he's really conservative and he doesn't charge. He's not like, if he has a wide open deal, he'll charge. But if there's a lot of lap cars around, he's really patient. And I think had he charged the corner harder, and he just kept driving as hard as he was driving because he drove away from Shane. Shane only caught him because of the lap cars, and he really started getting conservative. Again, I've never in my entire life watched a race and lost. I've won every single one that I watched. So I get it. We've all been there, but that's one of those deals where, I guarantee you AJ's looking back at that deal going, oh, man, there's so many things he could have did different. But needless to say, Sabraski, number 45 on the year, hell of a season he's had. I mean, he's a wheel man for sure.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, the more I watch him, the more I see that. But I do want to mention one thing. We talked about how the late model feature, the track had locked down and, it was a one-laner. But the modified feature was right after the late model feature, and they were able to race multiple grooves. So,
They farmed it.
Okay. Yep. All right.
Yeah, you didn't see that on the replay because they cut that part of it out.
Well, no, I don't know if they cut that out, but when you watch it afterwards, you can just kind of fast forward. So, okay, that makes sense then.
They farmed it. They should have probably farmed it before the late models, but hindsight's 2020, but the mods had a hell of a race there. Another race that was maybe not quite as good, but a little bit of history there. The Superstock feature, my favorite class, Dave Moss started up front, drove out to a big lead, never looked back. Dylan Kromschroeder, a young gun. I picked on this kid. I said, man, he's a cherry picker. He skipped the whole Superstock series. He's done it at his home tracks, but he was racing for some championships down south. But he come up on a big stage here at the Fall Classic, got second. Great run for him in the 9 car. And Moss, as it turns out, he only raced Ogilvie a couple times this year. He raced there, traditionally that's kind of been one of his main tracks all the way back to 2009. And looking at it here, Ben from Dirt Race Central posted this. He said, with that feature win, he's won at least one feature there every single year since the track opened in 2009. So I think he's the only guy to ever do that. And he's got, after that, it's 91 feature wins at the Big O for Dave Moss. So congratulations. I've raced a lot of laps against him. We may not have liked each other when we did race against each other, but he's a hell of a race car driver. Bert, did you watch the Midwest Mod feature?
I did watch the Midwest Mod feature, and
that was good.
I apologize. I don't know the names as well as you do, obviously, but that was a pretty good feature, especially at the very end when the checkered flag was waving and there's only like a half a car length difference.
Yeah, there was. It seemed like they went green, white, checkered a couple times. They had a bunch of cautions right at the end, and Jason Vandekamp, who's won that race, I don't know how many times, but I think he's got a couple wins at the Fall Classic for sure. I think it might even be more than that. He's won a few of them, but he's a really good driver, runs a mod and a Midwest mod. Looked like he had it kind of sitting pretty good there, but Travis Schulte was rolling on the high side, and you could see, he was driving that thing so far into 3 on the high side, and the one time he got by him for the lead, and then the yellow came out, I'm like, there is no way Vandekamp's going to go up and block. There's no way. And he really couldn't, because at the time on the Delaware start, Dave Kane, he was driving the car Tony Barr usually drives. He was side by side. He's running the bottom. So now Vandekamp, he's seeing Kane roll the bottom. He's seeing Schulte on the top. He's like, well, holy crap, what do I do? And Schulte snuck by him on the outside coming off 4 for his second Fall Classic win. So congrats to him on that one. That was a hell of a show too. In the class, I talked about this after Madison. Another spectacular performance by the Wissota Street Stocks. And Bert, I'm gonna tell you straight up, like literally until this year, watching a lot of races online, and probably mainly because I'm friends with a few of them guys and they had that Steffa Street Stock Tour. I personally, right, wrong, or indifferent, never paid a lot of attention to the Wissota Street Stocks. I just didn't. I watched the mods, late, supers, sometimes the Midwest mods. I just didn't pay attention. I'm here to tell you, like, if you're an avid race fan, that they probably put on the best show out of everybody. It's absolutely amazing. And Ryan Satter with another big win. Boy, he's been fast. He just won the King of Dirt. But the guy that was really on the move, Parker Anderson, he won one night over at the Madtown Showdown. He wins the B main, comes from 17th to 2nd. If there's a restart with a couple laps to go, he might win that deal from the B. I mean, he was impressive driving over there from Phillips, Wisconsin. So really had a blast watching those street stocks. And like I said, Mother Nature cooperated, great fan count, great car count. You know, hats off to FYE Motorsports, hats off to the folks at Ogilvie Speedway, because they put on a hell of a show this weekend.
Yeah, they did. That division actually reminds me a lot of the IMCA stock car division on our side of the state. It seems like every week it's door handle to door handle racing, you know, sometimes, you know, 3 wide, sometimes even 4 wide. And actually, one of the announcers on this side of the state dubbed the IMCA stock car division as the division too tough to tame. And so, you know, it's kind of fitting because it's a rough and tumble, but it produces some great racing. And that's what the Wissota Street Stock division is doing also.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And, you know, we've talked a lot on this show about, you know, we criticize some drivers and then they seem to come out and prove us wrong, and we must have pissed somebody off this last week.
Yeah, we're like, you know, this guy's only won 3 features since he's been a late model. Kyle Larson goes over to Port Royal. Incidentally, he owns Port Royal. He lets people race there, but he kind of owns that place, and he doubled up there this weekend. I think it was a Nittany, was it the Nittany Showdown or Nittany Shootout over there at Port Royal? Won both of them. I mean, just incredible. I mean, that guy it's just insane watching him race. But you know, Kyle, if you're watching the show, I mean, obviously he must watch the show, right? Send us a check, because our column got you from 2nd to 1st, so you're welcome for that. And but in all honesty, it's been a joy watching him this year, and he was a class of the field both nights. I mean, he's so good everywhere, but at that track, he's about unbeatable. And my buddy Keith, he's like, guess who won? He goes, well, you don't even have to guess. You know who won. I mean, so he's a huge Kyle Larson fan. I keep giving him crap. So he's going to get in a NASCAR. He's like, God, I hope not, because I'll never get to watch him race dirt again if he gets with the wrong team. So hopefully, I'm going to cross my fingers that he stays in dirt so that we get to watch him, because it's been a treat. And the points in the World of Outlaw right now, you know, that kind of tightened up a little bit here. You know, you got Sweet out front. You got Schuhart is 2nd, 32 back, but Donnie Schatz, after a couple respectable weekends here, he's only 68 points out with 5 points races left. So, you know, I mean, one bad night there for Sweet, couple good nights for them, and you could have a hell of a finish coming into the World Finals here. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Well, in one of those races, Sweet did have some tough luck. He was involved in one of the wrecks in one of those races. One thing that I think we talked about this the other week, but it amazes me at how big that track is. That track has some long straightaways. And actually, Larson did get passed in one of those races, but then the caution came out right after that. So they reverted back to the last completed lap, and then it was over after that.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm pretty sure that Larson would have got him back, but, you know, it's he sure makes watching sprint car racing fun, though. I probably watched more sprint car racing this year than I have in the last several years combined. So, you know, I'm a late model fan, and, you know, and there wasn't a lot of late model racing this past weekend because the hurricane took care of some of the Lucas shows. But the Mars series did get their races in, and they started Friday night at Peoria Speedway in Illinois.
Yeah, you know, like you said, and it was kind of cool because there was no World of Outlaw late models. There was no Lucas Oil late models. So some of those guys from both series came over and raced with this one in Peoria. a guy that has been, you know, you get him on the national stage, you get him on the Lucas Oil Series, it's like this guy's not even competitive for whatever reason. But then you get him on his home turf, and Brian Shirley is really good. You get him around that Illinois area, that guy is flat out fun to watch, and he won the first night out. So that was impressive. Now, what's interesting is Heckenast had a pretty big lead rolling into night number 1 in the points. I don't exactly remember the number.
33.
33. So
points.
pretty substantial. Heckenast stepped all over his wiener. Like the pressure was too much. He spins out, then he got caught up, gets a flat tire, and literally he could not have, literally had a rough night there. Actually, I think that might have been the second night. What did Heckenast finish the first night? Or did he had
a flat tire at Fairbury.
Yeah, that was Fairbury where I'm thinking.
Right.
So, but needless to say, he didn't have a very good night at Peoria either, because they closed the gap all the way to 6. So I misspoke a little bit there on Peoria. But he just had a terrible night. The only guy to really pass was Pierce. Jimmy Mars was at all 3. He punted a tractor tire in Peoria. I guess this is why I didn't really remember it. Kind of locked down on the bottom. And there is, in my opinion, and Bert, I'm going to let you weigh in on this, there is nothing worse, nothing, than a 1 lane on the bottom racetrack. It is like excruciating to watch. Like you can't, there's like nothing anybody can do. And that's what Peoria did. It got down on the bottom. They just rolled around. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it was, you had the race on the bottom side. It wasn't a lockdown track like you would think it's a lockdown track. Actually, it was a track where it looked like there was too much traction in the bottom lane, and the rest of the track had slicked off. So you wanted to stay in the traction lane. To me, I don't know if they move those tires in and out in the corners. To me, if they would have pushed the tires out further and blocked that traction lane, I'll call it, then it would have been, the entire racing service would have been slick from top to bottom, and that would have probably produced better racing. You
know, that's a great idea. I've seen that done at several tracks where, you know, think about Cedar Lake. How many times you see Cedar Lake, they had a traction strip on the bottom as wide as a car.
Yep.
The whole rest of the track's dirty and marbly, and nobody can really go anywhere up there. You know, not every night was like that, but more than should have been. And when that happens, it's like, well, you can't even race. So nobody, as a driver, nobody likes some big U tires. But if I had to pick between big U tires and 1 lane on the bottom racing, give me the U tires. I'll take them all day long, because at least you can move around on the track. So take them tires, move them out on the traction, kind of rework that outside part of the track, clean it off, so that way it's clean and dry from the tires to the wall, right, and at least people can move around on the track. So if you use them tires properly, you can actually make a multiple lane racing surface. And as a driver, and especially as a fan, I'd take 1 lane on the cushion all day long over 1 lane on the bottom, because at least you can chuck some sliders in. On the bottom, it's like bumper cars down there, and you're hoping somebody slides up and you can't do nothing. Nobody wants to watch that. But that was only night 1. That was the lowest paying show of the deal. But night 2 was a whole lot better at Fairbury, and we've been raving about this.
Can I make
place.
one comment before we get to Fairbury? I have seen tracks use those tires in the way that you had just described. Just an example, Shawano Speedway was doing that 1 year, and when the World of Outlaw came there, they did that. They pushed there was a traction strip at the bottom. They pushed the tires out to block that traction lane, and on the pace laps, the Outlaw drivers used their noses and nudged the tires down inside. And
nice.
it did exactly that. It was a 1 lane. Everybody's hugging the bottom because that's where the traction is.
Right. And yeah, I may have done that in the past myself a time or two. And, you know, it depends where you start. If you're starting back in 15th, you're like going in the infield, pushing them out on the track. It's
right.
Like, I want more than 1 lane here. But if you're starting in the front, you're like, ooh, this is an advantage. We'll kind of slide them in. And then you hit your marks and the race is over. And I've been on so many tracks. I've been on a lot of good tracks, been on a lot of bad tracks. But like I said, my least favorite thing when I raced as a racer and as a fan is 1 lane on the bottom. It just absolutely drives me insane.
Yep. But you had mentioned Fairbury. That's a track you don't have to worry about moving tires around in the bottom.
No. That place is awesome. And this is where Heckenast kind of dropped the ball. He was down by 6 points to Shirley here. Frankie had a 6
He was
point
up by
lead.
6.
Yeah, Frankie had a 6 point lead because he had a 33-point lead on Shirley, lost a chunk of that, had a 6 point lead, and then he just self-destructed. He ended up spinning out, got a flat tire, DNF'd the race, and Shirley what did Shirley get in that deal? He was up in like 6th or 7th, somewhere in that neighborhood. But needless to say, the guy that's owned falls for every time he goes there lately, Brandon Shepard. I mean, he was a class of the field. Josh Richards was not real far behind him. Never really mounted a huge challenge, but he was there. And I believe last time they were there, they finished 1st and 2nd as well. And, the guy that was impressive to me, though, was Shannon Babb, the Moeco Missile. He started 20th, got to 3rd. And I watched a lot of races at Fairbury this year, and he has been very good at Fairbury. Do you know if he was running, which car he was running? Was he running the Bloomquist car?
He had the Bloomquist car.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So that thing looked really good. Jimmy Mars got 5th, so a good solid top 5 for the Iceman. But, what's interesting is, and we'll get into this in a second here, but I was looking at the points deal. I'm thinking, okay, all 3 of these nights are Mars races, and I was confused because I looked at the points after the second night, after Fairbury, and it said final points. I'm like, well, they got one more racing in LaSalle tomorrow. What are they talking about? Well, they only had points at the first 2, and their fall or their finale or whatever wasn't even for points. That makes no sense to me. Did that make any sense to you?
No, that didn't make any sense to me because, well, first of all, I want to comment on Babb because I tuned in a little late. I didn't see the heat races. I tuned in for the B mains, and Babb is on the front row of a B main. It's like, what is Babb doing on the front row of a B main? But yeah, he went 20th to 3rd. So, I mean, that was a great run for him. But as far as the championship night, when everything was happening with Heckeness, he got the flat tire. The announcers were saying he was up by 6 points, and, this is really going to hurt him. And then, it took him a while to get the tire changed because I think the tire shredded and it wrapped around. But he did get back out there, and then he came back in, and then the announcer said, well, Shirley just clinched the championship. And I'm thinking, how can he clinch the championship? You guys have one more race. And the funny thing is, because the Sunday night race in LaSalle was even called championship night.
Right.
Well,
right.
They give away the championship trophy, but I don't understand that. I mean, why do you have a non-points race in a series? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I guess that we'll have to ask. I'll have to ask Tony Izzo about that. He has 16 promotions. That's his series, and I'm just gonna say, why on earth would you do that? That made absolutely no sense to me either. I really don't understand why, but I am gonna ask him why he did that because I was really curious. And again, the class of the field, Brandon Shepard, but was he the class of the field? He wasn't dominant. He didn't get the lead till the end. You know who ran really well in that race? Chris Simpson. He's got like 5 or 6 nights now. He's switched over from Longhorns to MB Customs, and he looked pretty darn good. I mean, he led the lion's share of that race. He must have led all but like maybe 5-6 laps at the end. And did you happen to see the incident that happened about halfway through, just past the halfway mark with him, some lap cars, Rusty Schlenk? Did you see that, Neil?
Well, I didn't see it originally. I was watching it, and then the announcer said, Schlenk hits a lap car, and they weren't sure how much damage he had. Well, then they showed he turned around and, he had broke a tie rod or something. I mean, there's no way he was going to continue. And then it looked like he darted up towards Chris Simpson. And then the announcer said, well, he must not be happy with Chris Simpson. Maybe Simpson spun the lap car. But I didn't see it. So actually what I did, because I was watching it on my computer, so I just moved it back a little bit and rewatched it. And you really can't tell, but Simpson was really close to the car, so I think there might have been some contact.
Yeah, I looked for that too, and I kind of scrolled back there, and I'm like, man, I couldn't see it. It's all on dirt, and I scrolled, and I kept looking, and it didn't really show the incident, unfortunately. But needless to say, he must have seen something that warranted him being pissed off, because the lap car, I think in the lap car was Rich Bell. And he got turned around. He went up the track, smashed into him, wrecked his front end. There goes a second-place finisher for Rusty Schlenk, who looked really good. Bishop was struggling to even kind of stay with him there. So it looked like we had a really good race brewing. But needless to say, Brandon Shepherd in that B5, he don't miss a beat. He gets out of Rocket 1, he gets into B5, he's just as fast. It don't matter. And like you said, them cars are so consistent that it doesn't matter which car. They're all basically the same. So, man, he's got a lot of wins this year. He's a hell of a driver.
And they were talking about this on Dirt too, and you had just mentioned it. Was Brandon Shepherd the class of the field in the LaSalle race? I mean, he was the class of the field in Fairbury. I mean, he won in dominating fashion. But to me, almost winning in LaSalle was almost more impressive to me, because I like to watch what a driver has to do to win. And if you watched him race, he was searching all over that track, looking for the right groove. I mean, he finally found it where high side 3 and 4, down by the tires in 1 and 2. And he did that lap after lap after lap until, and then he did a slider to finish off the pass. So, I mean, you can tell a really, really good driver is one that will search and search. And when they find something, it's not always the high side all the way around the track. Sometimes it's the high side in only 2 corners and the low side in the other 2. So to me, that's almost more fun to watch than somebody just dominating.
You're exactly right. In fact, our late model expert, Jeff, he kind of shot me over some stats and kind of kept me up to speed on the late model stuff this weekend. I was out of town. I did get to watch it all as well. But that's what he said. He goes, man, he was so methodical. He was just watching him search for that groove and find the right groove. He said that was impressive. And that's a testament right there. One thing about Tony Izzo, that guy can flat out prepare a racetrack. I've heard a lot of people say that when he prepared that track at LaSalle, there was some good racing. And that's the first race I've seen in a long time at LaSalle. There was a distinct 3 grooves of racing, because Chris Simpson was rolling the middle. I think he was too tight to run the bottom, so he was rolling the middle and kind of coming up like he was a little tight, so he was kind of trying to just carry that momentum. Shepherd was kind of charging the top, and then he started moving around at the end. And a guy that got third there, I think Shirley got third, right?
Yeah, he was up there.
Yeah, Shirley got third, and he was actually running right on the bottom. And he was right inside.
Yeah, he was right on the bottom.
Yeah, so, I mean, there was 3 lines of racing there. So if you haven't watched it, jump on Dirt and catch that action, because it was a hell of a good race. So, Peoria, not so much. Don't even waste your time watching that one. That one sucked. But Fairbury's always good. If there's a race at Fairbury, it's like a must. You have to watch it. But LaSalle, I would say LaSalle was as good or better than Fairbury was.
Did you see Brandon Shepherd's heat race at LaSalle?
I did not.
I mean, if you can go back and watch that, I would recommend that too, because he was running third, I believe, with maybe like 3 or 4 laps to go. And he was a little bit, there is quite a bit of a gap between the second place car and him. And he was right on the top all the way around the track. And he caught him and passed all of them. And I mean, it in that case, the high side all the way around the track was the fast way. So, I mean, that's, like I said before, a driver who can race different lines and search. And I almost enjoy watching that more than just a dominating race by
Absolutely.
A driver.
There's a reason he's the #1 rated driver in the country in the late model class, and that's why. I mean, he's absolutely. I mean, he's fun to watch. But I gotta be honest. I'm very impressed with Brian Shirley.
Yep.
He's somebody that when he was running the Lucas stuff, I'm like, man, this guy, what's his deal? But a lot of them Woo guys, a lot of the Lucas guys have raced against him on his home turf, and you get him around that home area, that Illinois, maybe it's the dirt or whatever. Man, is he good at home. He's so good. And I'm looking forward to seeing him down at the Wild West Shootout in January, because he was a class of the field down there. So, he won the Mars Series and he won the Hell Tour. So he won both regional series. So a heck of a good year there to the Squirrel, Brian Shirley.
Yeah, and he's got, there's a Wisconsin connection with that, because his car owner is from Wisconsin. So, and speaking of Wisconsin, we got to make sure to mention Taylor Scheffler made the trip down to all 3 of those races in the Mars Series. Finished 17th at Peoria, 16th at Fairbury, and 13th at LaSalle. So he qualified really good at Fairbury for sure. I think he started 5th or so.
I think he was fast qualifier in his group, wasn't he? At Fairbury.
So you know, he's good at qualifying. He's got to work a little bit during the race, but I mean, he's still young and, you know, gaining experience. So, you know, it's good to see local drivers make trips like that, because whenever I interview drivers, you know, they always say, whenever I ask them, why do you travel? Because you learn so much when you travel.
Right. You race against some good competition, you apply what you learn, and you're going to be better for it. And, you know, we've seen that on the Wissota side of things with some certain drivers, and hats off to him for making the trip down there and racing against some top competition. So that's pretty cool. And, you know, I'm a mod guy. So, Bert, I don't know if you got a chance to watch this. It was on XR. Did you watch any of the mod racing?
I did not see any of it, no.
All right. So it was the race for Hope 71, which is the big race at Batesville, Arkansas, IMCA mods down there. And surprise, surprise, RTJ, the 20 RT, brand new lethal car out there, class of the field, got her done. Now, what's interesting on this brings us to Ryan's Rant of the Week. All right. Ryan's Rant of the Week brought to you by the folks at Impact Health Sharing. We're getting into open enrollment. If you're paying way too much for a health car, get a hold of me. I'll give you another alternative here that might be a good fit for you. But night number 1, Peyton Taylor. This kid's a good driver. He's a really good driver. Had a hell of a good race there with Ricky Thornton Jr. Beat him at the line in the qualifying feature on night 1. And RTJ is like, man, hey, that was a fun race. And, you know, I mean, it was neck and neck at the end. Well, they go to post-race tech, and not so fast. Peyton Taylor, you're done for the weekend. Go home, son. You don't get this win. Ricky Thornton Jr. gets the win. Well, what happened, and this is why I hate crate motors, multiple reasons. Crate motors are stupid, okay? It just is what it is. But here's why. Because he had seals on the crate motor that were counterfeit, all right? So what does that mean? That means that somebody took that apart, they cheated it all up, and they put their own seals on there to make it look like it was sealed up. Well, one thing with IMCA racing, you get to a big show like that, they're going to tech you. They're going to catch on to that stuff. They caught him, and he had a big Facebook post, Peyton Taylor did on there, that said, you know, we bought this engine used. We're not going to buy a used one anymore. And maybe that's true. I don't know, probably. I'm sure he didn't lie about it. But, you know, he apologized to his fans, his sponsors, his family, apologized to everybody. He said, man, it was still a fun race with Ricky. Congratulations, Ricky. So he owned up to it. But, you know, I remember back in the day, Bert, my dad was a tech guy at the Hibbing Raceway. I was in 3rd grade, okay? I was just going into 3rd grade. And they had a 6-cylinder class, a local 6-cylinder class that ran Hibbing, and they ran Grand Rapids. Every once in a while, you go to a couple other tracks, but it was primarily a local deal. Well, rumor got out that somebody was doing that same deal in Hibbing with the 6-cylinders. So, on the last night of the year, my dad called all 10 of the top 10 in points and said, here's the deal, top 10 in points, all of you to the tech shed, we're pulling all your engines. And every one of them said, but we're sealed. We're sealed. And my dad's like, don't care. Don't care. We're looking. I got a rumor here going around that you guys are all doing some stuff, and we're going to find out. They weren't happy. I don't remember the exact number, but it was either six or 7, I think, of the top 10 were all cheated up. All right? And I get to school on the next Monday, and I get to class, and Mrs. Jenko kicks me out of class. I'm like, what? She's like, no, you got to go sit in the hall. I'm like, why? Well, she sponsored a guy by the name of Brad Hansen, who's, you know, one of my friends. He won a bunch of races back in the day, and he was one of the guys that had the illegal motor. And she's like, no, you got to sit in the hall because Brad got disqualified, and, you know, that cost him, and we weren't happy about that. And she was kidding, but it was kind of funny. I'll never forget it to this day. So that whole sealing up your engine deal, if anybody thinks that that's a viable option for, like, just not teching somebody, you're stupid, because obviously they've been doing it for years. That was back in, had to have been like 1983, 84, somewhere in that neighborhood, somewhere. I'd have to go back and do the math on 3rd grade. What would that have been? 4 years in, must have been about 10 years old. So yeah, must have been about 84, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that seal deal doesn't work. It just simply does not. So these crate engines, if somebody's really fast in a crate engine, there might be a pretty good option or a pretty good deal that they're cheating that deal up. And that we all know it's been going on forever. So just get rid of the stupid sealed up deal, because that's just a waste of time. It's an illusion. It doesn't do anything. And, you know, that's the fact is, and I like to go back and support our local engine builders. I'm sick of this going to GM and getting engines built down in Mexico. You know, they're a bunch of junk, got junk parts in them. People say, oh, it reduces the cost of racing. No, it does not. Because there's people out there that'll buy 10 crate engines at a time. They'll dyno it, see which one's the best, get rid of all the other ones. Who can do that? Or now they're taking the crate engines and going to one of the crate rebuilders, and they're maxing everything out, and it costs them double by the time they're all said and done to gain 50 more horse. Just go to a local engine builder, get yourself a concept, get yourself an open motor, whatever. Get this crate thing out of there. It's stupid. It's bad for racing. Here's another example right here. So that's my rant of the week, brought to you by Impact Health Sharing. So, Bert, should we get to the week ahead? You know,
well, first I want to
go ahead.
I want to mention Marcus Yari, who's from Wausau, Wisconsin. He's a multi-time Channel Speedway IMCA modified track champion. He made the trip down to Batesville and made the feature and finished 24th. So, you know, like we just said in the previous segment, you know, you travel to race against the best and try to learn some things. So, you know, hats off to him for making the show.
Absolutely. I raced against him a couple times. I've never met him at all. But I remember when I raced at the SK Speedway, it was a Spring Lake Speedway at the time when Scott Duvall owned it. He sold it, now it's the SK Speedway. But their modified rules were kind of one of those deals where you could run WISSOTA, USRA, IMCA. So he made a couple trips over there. I raced against him, but I never got a chance to meet him. So
he's a good guy.
Oh, he's a mod guy. Of course he is. So we talked, there wasn't a lot of racing this last weekend. There really wasn't. We're kind of winding down to where it's going to be kind of minimal each week, right? We're kind of getting less and less as the year goes on. Well, let's talk about the week ahead. And this segment brought to you by the folks over at Dirt Track Supply in Watertown, South Dakota. So whatever you need, from safety equipment to parts, to, I mean, like Weir's parts. They have all that over there. I mean, they have everything that you need. They're your track supplier, I believe, at 6 different racetracks. They build the aero chassis. If you're looking at getting into a new car, whether it's a street stock, a super stock, a Midwest mod, a modified, you're looking to get into something, give them guys a call, because Trevor's been pretty darn bolted in his stuff, and there's some fast cars in Watertown that are aero chassis. So give them guys a call. If you need parts, which it's that time of year, we're all kind of getting back into the rebuilding for next year. It's dirttracksupply.com. You can call them. The number here is on the screen, or just simply look it up online. But it's Dirt Track Supply. Ask for Trevor, ask for Ron, and they'll do everything they can to help you. A good group of folks out there in Watertown, South Dakota. So with that said, we got the final regional late model race of the year. I'm kind of sad, yep. But talk a little bit about this one coming up.
Well, it's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
I love it.
The Great Pumpkin Race at Mississippi Thunder Speedway. They're going to be having a race, like you said, the final local race of the year. You know, it's actually kind of fitting that the final race is at Mississippi Thunder, because they were the first one to hold a race while the state was still in a lockdown.
Yep.
So you know, start it and end it there.
You know, and what's weird is it wasn't on the schedule, right? They got done and they're kind of looking, and people were kind of saying, we got to get the pumpkin race back. And they're like, I don't know, well, what do you think? Should we do it? And, well, enough drivers kind of prodded on them and said, well, why not? Let's go ahead and do it. So they added this one just a couple weeks ago. It's going to be a doubleheader Friday and Saturday night. I believe the action can all be caught on Race and Dirt. And it's 2 complete shows. I believe it's 2 complete shows for all classes. And they have multiple classes of cars there. But one thing that I'm kind of curious about is, what will the late model count be? Because we have the MLRA deal coming up, the final weekend for MLRA. So I believe the Simpsons and all that, they're going to be over at that. Some of the guys, I talked to Anvilink, he ain't coming down because he's building a shop. He said Springborn probably is. Jesse Glenn said he's done. Massengill's done for the year. So I'm hoping to get I'd like to see 20 cars down there in the late models. But I talked to some WISSOTA drivers, and they showed some concern. So the concern is this: they kind of have that rules package to where they want to try to make it uniform so different sanctioning bodies can come in. So what they were doing with their open motors is they were putting a restrictor on them. And in Cedar Lake, they had a 1-inch restrictor, okay, and Mississippi Thunder had 1 1/8 inches. Well, when I talked to people like patdoar, and Pat said that 1 1/8 inches doesn't do nothing. He says it's not even slowing them deals down. He goes, half the time on an open motor, you put 1 1/8 inches on there just to kind of make the thing drive better. It don't do nothing. Well, they actually at Mississippi Thunder now, after this the last show down there, they did this. They went to 1 1/4 inches. So they actually made it bigger. They actually give the open motors just a little bit more of an edge. And now that, from what I understand, they're in talks with Cedar Lake trying to get them to go from 1 inch to 1 1/8. Well, Pat Doer, this guy's got a lot of experience. He's ran open stuff with soda stuff and everything in between. He's like, they're going the wrong way with this deal. He goes, if they make this deal to where the open motors are an advantage, we're just all going to quit coming. And they're not going to get any WISSOTA cars. And if you look at all their shows down there, half of them are WISSOTA legal. Well, they don't run late models on a regular night. They simply do not. So they don't have a lot to draw from. They got to pull from all these areas. And if you get it to where the WISSOTA guys don't want to come anymore, they're going to have 10, 12 late models, and they ain't going to have a show anymore. So they may want to consider that, because that place there, Bob does not let it get bone dry most of the time. They usually farm it up, and they usually get it to where there's some traction on the racetrack, which is good. But with traction brings the advantage to the open motors. And if there's too much of an advantage there, why would you waste your time heading down there? You're bringing a knife to a gunfight. Why do it? And, they've done a lot of great things over there, including reconfigure the track to make the bottom a little quicker. They're doing a lot of things, having a lot of big shows. But they may want to consider talking to the drivers that are supporting that deal to see if they're all on the same page, because it sounds to me like they're not.
Yeah, this is the first that I'm hearing about this. And, yeah, it's kind of surprising that they would move in that direction. Because, yeah, when they get good late model car counts, but that's because they incorporate all the different sanctions. And if one sanction, if the rules of one sanction are going to be at a disadvantage, those cars aren't going to come. So It will be interesting to see how many cars are there this weekend.
Yeah, and knowing Bob and knowing Tyrone over there, they'll take a look at it. They'll analyze everything, because there's been comments made, just in case they're listening to this. Tyrone, if you're listening to this, there has been comments made by late model drivers that have WISSOTA stuff saying, well, Jake Tim's got an open motor, so they're just going to give him more of an edge because Daddy runs the racetrack. I'm not saying that's the case, but if that starts going around too much, that's not a good thing, right? So, it's all perception. In this sport, it's all perception. And if drivers feel that and they kind of get that stuck in their head, they're going to believe that as truth. And, he's a racer's racer down there. He's a racer's promoter. They do everything they can to try to put on a good show. They're for the racer, but talk to the late model guys, get on the same page, make sure you're all going in the right direction, because I want to see, I'm happy, I'm excited as a fan to see all the good stuff that's happened at Mississippi Thunder. I want to see that continue and grow, and I know they got a lot of big plans for the future. I want to see that going better and better and better. They don't need any black eyes, because things have been so good there this year. So talk to the WISSOTA late model drivers, especially the experienced ones, and get their input and get on the same page with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, 100%. They've done a lot of good things. And one thing that I've seen this year is they seem to really care about their drivers, and they do take the input in. I think it was earlier this year, they weren't happy with the track conditions, so they had the same payout or something like that.
Yeah,
so
they do a lot for the drivers down there, for sure.
So, hopefully, everybody can sit down and, figure it out, and we can have some great late model shows there next year. But, like I said, like we said, that's the last local show, and the national series is starting to wind down too. Lucas Oil has Dirt Track World Championship coming up this weekend.
Oh, I'm jacked up for this one. With that said, there was supposed to be one more local show, but the Can-Am Clash up in Superior for the third year in a row, they canceled. They've never had it. It's never happened. And, it comes to the point where they finally going to just say enough's enough. Let's just not even bother scheduling this deal, because having a show this late in the year in Superior, Wisconsin, the odds are against you. Let's just say that. But Lucas Oil late models, like you said earlier, both shows canceled this last weekend, thanks to the hurricane, right? But the biggest show of the year, $100,000 to win, Portsmouth, Ohio, the Dirt Track World Championship. There's no World of Outlaw racing going on this week. So in my eyes, you're going to see the top Woo guys, all the Lucas guys. You're going to see people like Overton and Madden. You're going to see all these guys. I saw Tyler Carpenter's coming. Kyle Larson, who won his last night out in a late model, he's scheduled to be there. So what's your over and under, Bert? I'm going to go out on a limb, the optimist in me, right? I'm going to say 60 late models at this show. What do you think?
I was just thinking 60 as that number of, is it over 60 or under 60? And I'll say over 60 by a little bit. I'm hoping you're right. I talked to my buddy Jeff, and he says, I think you're going to be close, but Jeff is taking our late model expert's taking the under, and I think I'm going to go with the over. The optimist on me, I'm going to be with you, Bert, just over 60 cars. But needless to say, there's going to be a ton of good ones, and let's make some picks. I mean, who do you got to win the top paying show of 2020 for the late models? Who do you got? Well, I was thinking about this today, and I've been a little hard on him a little bit this year, but he's been running good the last few weeks. I am going to go with Josh Richards. He seems to have a lot of success in this race, and he's been running good the last few weeks, so he's going to be my pick.
There you go.
So I'll let you go with Bishop.
I'm not taking Bishop.
Oh, okay.
I'm not. I'm taking T-Mac. Now, the reason why is he has the most crown jewel wins, and can he extend that by one? So, we can each take a dark horse in there, and you take your dark horse.
No, you go first with the dark horse. I got to think a little bit.
I'll take Bishop as a dark horse then.
Oh,
real dark horse in that one, right?
Okay,
I'll going out there on a limb.
I'll take Kyle Larson as a dark horse.
There you go. That's at least more of a dark horse. But, boy, this is going to be a good one. And Thursday night sounds like Jeff said that it's kind of like Cedar Lake where they have qualifying and then they're going to do some kind of a dash. I don't know if they're going to do that elimination deal, or that's going to be at the World Finals, excuse me. That's not at this one. It's just Heat's one-day features the next at this one, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I didn't look at the schedule.
Yeah. I was thinking of World Finals. He told me about that. And the first day is a non-points race. It's just qualifying in some kind of a dash deal. But that's coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about that as we get a little closer. But needless to say, the points is all wrapped up. So, I mean, it's basically everybody that's in the top 5 is locked in, right? But the money's on the line for this one. I'd like to see a breakdown. I don't have that in front of me. We'll have it for the next show when we talk about the recap of it next week. But $100,000 to win, that is the highest paying show for the late models in 2020. And like I said, what I'm most excited about is everybody should be at this one because they don't have World of Outlaw stuff going on. And, there's a lot of different guys from a lot of different regions that should be heading down. So I'm super excited to see that.
Yeah, and none of the drivers will be racing for points. I mean, it's going to be strictly you're racing to win.
Yep. Yeah, there's no saving your equipment to get a good points night. Just hammer down. Now, with that said, Kyle Larson is going to be at that race, which means that he will not be at the World of Outlaw sprint car races that's at Lakeside Speedway in Kansas. And then they have the Jason Johnson Classic at the Lake Ozark Speedway in Eldon, Kansas. That's Friday and Saturday. So, surprise, surprise. 5 races left for the World of Outlaws. Who's going to rise to the top this weekend in the Woo Sprint Cars?
I'll go with a dark horse. Donnie Schatz, I'll go with.
I was just going to say that. No, I can't pick him now because you did. But I'm really hoping, because he's kind of a local guy for us.
He's been pecking away at that point.
He has. He's been really good the last few weeks. So the optimist in me says by the end of the weekend, he's in striking distance for the point lead. That's what I'm really hoping. A guy that I've had a fun time watching this year, Sheldon Hodenschild. He's really up on the wheel, so he's going to be my guy to kind of keep an eye on this weekend. So 2 good races with no Kyle Larson. I'm guessing all the World of Outlaw Sprint guys they're kind of licking their chops a little bit, going, "Thank God he's not coming this week." So that's my thoughts anyway.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned they only have 5 more races to go. Even if Brad Sweet won every one of those races, he'd only be ahead of Larson in victories by 1.
Isn't that something? And yeah, Kyle Larson, we'll talk about that in a minute here, but yeah, he's leading the win count. He only has half the shows, and he's been on fire. So they got to be super happy that he's not going to be there for sure. So that gets us into the last lap, Bert, presented by Zuli Race Engines. This is not crate engines. This is Zuli Race Engines, okay? And they build engines for all classes. You know, I talked to Justin Vogel, and, you know, he just raves about his. I mean, he's a former national champion. He said that he can tell when he had an older motor in his car that wasn't from Frank, he was okay. He put the engine in the car from Frank, and boom, he's right in the front, you know, challenging for the win each and every night. And I talked to a lot of people that actually run his stuff. Very happy. Give Frank Zuli a call. Does a great job for a lot of drivers based out of kind of that western Minnesota area. And Vogel's the main guy I know that runs his stuff, and he can't say enough good about that. In fact, I'm going to have to jump online with him, maybe do an exclusive just to get him to talk about that a little bit. But Frank Zuli, great job over there, Zuli Race Engines. And that brings us into the last lap, Bert. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. We're talking about, well, there's some NASCAR news this week. We were talking about Kyle Larson a little bit. I mean, this news doesn't necessarily pertain to him, but it might pertain to him.
Maybe.
Clint Boyer has announced that he will be retiring from the NASCAR's Top Series at the end of this year. He's going to be going into the booth at Fox Sports. So he races for, obviously, Stewart-Haas Racing, and Tony Stewart is a big backer of Kyle Larson. So could this be the ride that Larson was looking for to get back into NASCAR? I guess time will tell.
I'm saying that all the dirt fans out there that like Kyle Larson, this is where we want him. If he's going to go back to NASCAR, that's where we want him. Optimally, we want him driving for Tony Stewart because he will have the ability and the latitude to be able to race other things. And if he gets in the wrong ride in NASCAR, he probably won't have that opportunity because they have some different clauses out there. And Stewart's going to start his new other program that he's got going on this year. Could Kyle Larson be one of the guys running his series that he has? So this could all tie together well. I heard some other names maybe in the mix, but, you know, knock on wood right here, right? Kyle Larson, Young Money, driving for Tony Stewart. I think that's a perfect fit. Hopefully we can make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Larson has so many victories this year in, you know, on the dirt side. You hate to see him go to NASCAR. We've kind of been spoiled a little bit because I know it's the money. But, you know, what are his stats for this year in the World of Outlaw Series?
Well, he's won 24. Wait, let me 12 of 24.
12 of 24.
12 of 24. There's been 49 shows, so he hasn't even entered half of them. He's been in 24 of 49 shows, and he's at a 50% win rate on those. And I should have the numbers. We'll try to get it after the World of Outlaw season's done. We'll talk about it more in depth, but I bet he's in the top 3 the lion's share of the time, right? You know, so that's just crazy. You know, 50% win rate, only running half the series. Those guys got to be super happy that he only ran half the series. Otherwise, it'd be just like the late models and modifieds. He'd be gone in that deal right now is what he would be. So, but yeah, he's a guy. I mean, again, thank you, NASCAR, for booting him out. So we've had an opportunity to see his talent on dirt because it's been a treat. I mean, I like watching talented race car drivers get around a racetrack. He's one of the most, if not the most talented guy, just a natural talent. And being able to see that as a race fan, that's been awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about, you know, his number of victories and his number of starts. You know, we get so excited with, you know, the number of wins Brandon Shepard, you know, has this year and the number of wins that Jimmy Owens has in the Lucas Series this year. But when you compare it to percentage of starts, you know, it's just amazing what Larson's done.
It's sickening is what it is. I mean, here I thought I won a few races back in the day, but my numbers were nothing like that. That guy, I mean, he can flat out drive, and like him, hate him, whatever it is, everybody's got their opinions. He's one of the best ever strapped in, and he's not even close to being done yet.
Yeah. There's not enough words to talk about him.
No, there's not. We'll get into that as we talk into Driver of the Year and all that stuff later. He's going to be in the conversation for that. But speaking of asphalt a little bit, one of your Wisconsin guys there did something pretty impressive at another asphalt race. Talk a little bit about that, Bert.
Yep, Ty Majeski. We've talked about him a few times on the show, especially back in February when there wasn't when the NASCAR series was just getting started for the year, because he had a full-time ride in the truck series. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but he's not in a truck anymore right now. But it's not due to a lack of talent, at least on the local side, because he can flat out drive a super late model. And they were racing at Oktoberfest in La Crosse this weekend. I can't remember how many years it's been going on, but it's been going on for, I think it's been over 40 years that Oktoberfest has been going on in La Crosse. And Ty Majeski was there racing, and I was glad to see him do this. He took a challenge where if he started at the back of the field, he would get an extra, I believe, $6,800. He took the challenge, started in the back, moved to the front, and won. So, he's definitely a par above the local drivers. He's that good. So it was good to see him take that challenge and not just start up front and, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where he would have started if he wouldn't have taken the challenge, but it would have been, closer to the front and, take the challenge, see what you can do. I saw him race earlier this year at WIR in Kaukauna, and he was definitely the class of the field at that race. And Kyle Busch was there, and Bubba Pollard, one of the top asphalt late model drivers in the country, was there too. So he's definitely a step above the local drivers, but apparently, what I've heard is the driver, he was replaced by Trevor Bayne apparently in the truck series, and apparently Trevor Bayne brought a sponsorship with him. So money.
Right. So when you talk in NASCAR, asphalt, ARCA, trucks, that's all money. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of those guys are extremely talented, but talent without money gets you nowhere in that game.
Right.
So it's kind of a sad deal because I've seen him race, and he's a hell of a race car driver. And, I think he just wants to be like Shane Sabraski. We started that deal, right, with the super stocks. Sabraski taking the back row challenge. Dirt Race Central started the whole money, the whole funding behind that. He did it. Then Chad Finkbone did it in the pure stock, and he's like, well, hey, if them guys can do it, I can do it too. And but that's pretty cool. I mean, I can't remember ever in all my years even one person taking a back row challenge and winning. And there was 3 people that did it this year, one in a super stock, one in a pure stock, and then, of course, him in the asphalt late models, which would probably be, the step above. That's kind of the top level class there. That's not something you see very often. So when it happens, race fans, if you had an opportunity to see that, cherish it, because it's something that you don't see very often. Usually the competition is just far too fierce for something like that to happen. And there was a lot of cars in that race. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was in the high 30s. I don't think it was. Maybe It was 40, but there was a pile of cars. So it's not like he started in the back. There was 12, 15, 18 cars. No, there was a full field of cars, and he drove by all of them to win. So hats off, Ty Majeski. I'm looking forward to see if that guy can take it to the next level in racing. Being a Midwestern guy, I'd love to see more Midwestern guys have that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just wanted you were talking about back row challenges. Back in the 90s, one year, one of the late model drivers organized a challenge like that. So every week, a driver had an opportunity to start in the back of the feature. Actually, 2 drivers did win the challenge. Chuck Buckby, who's in the Shawano Speedway Hall of Fame, and Terry Avelink won the challenge also, Nick Avelink's dad.
Okay.
I think Terry Evelink won like $2,000 by taking a challenge. So yeah, I mean, that's cool. This day and age, yeah, it seems to be tougher because back then we've talked about this plenty of times. The tracks were heavier, so you could. I think it was more conducive to take the back row challenge back then, but now you don't necessarily have that cushion up to ride.
No, you don't. And it's good for the sport, right? Because it creates unpredictability is what it creates. A lot of times, you go to especially a local regular night race, there's really only a couple of guys that are really going to be in the hunt to win. It seems to be the case most nights, most tracks, because with all the classes, they got 6, 7 classes at a lot of these tracks. Well, that really spreads things out. So you got 2 or 3 good ones in each class. And, don't get me wrong, there's a few other people that sneak in a win. But at most tracks nowadays, I could literally look at the lineup and I could say, okay, he's going to win, he's going to win, he's going to win. And that's the way it is. And when they take that back row challenge, it gives the fans something to really cheer about. And every time I've seen it, and this is something, Chad Finkel, okay, he won about every pure stock race he entered this year. He flat out dominated. And yes, it's just a pure stock, but needless to say, he won every single one. Well, people didn't cheer for him. They're like, the guy wins all the time. Who cares? They didn't cheer. But that pure stock race on Labor Day, when he won last corner pass for the win to win from dead last after taking the challenge, the whole crowd erupted. So that tells you right there that things like that are good for the sport. I mean, we've got to do more of that kind of stuff because it gets the fans interacting. It creates excitement, and that's something the sport really needs right now.
Yeah, I agree. And, it is good for the sport. And, speaking of things good for the sport, is silly season good for the sport?
Well, we got a little news. I got another text. I got it from our expert, Jeff, there. He said Hudson O'Neal got himself a new ride. The new deal got a new deal, and he's going to be driving for Double Down Motorsports. Shannon Buckingham, they ran a lot of Lucas Oil stuff, followed most of the series. But what I read in the article is towards the end of the season, he kind of dropped off the series for work-related stuff or whatever. So as a car owner, you're like, well, I get it, but the fact is we're paying for your ride. You need to be at all the shows. I don't know if there's more to it than that, but I guess one of the first big moves of the year here is Hudson O'Neal and they're switching. See, they were running Longhorns, and now they switched over to Rockets. So you're going to see Hudson O'Neal. I believe he's going to follow the Lucas Oil series in a Rocket for Double Down Motorsports. So pretty cool to see. Now, talking about late models, the World of Outlaws made a little bit of announcement, Bert. I don't know if you saw that online. They made a little announcement.
I did.
Coming season. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, at first glance, you think, well, that's great. It's great for the drivers because they came up with minimums to start, and for every race next year, it's going to at least be a minimum of $1,000 to start. I think they said 10th was going to be, what did they say 10th was going to be? 2,000. And then they have, minimum of 10,000 to win. So, I mean, like I said, on the surface, that looks great. But I did see some Facebook chatter, and I saw you had chimed in a little bit in that discussion. Because I know the promoter at Shano Speedway, Brad Lipke, also chimed in because Shano Speedway has hosted World of Outlaws 9 of the last 10 years. This was the first year out of the last 10 that they didn't. It's going to cost more. Now, I would assume it's going to cost more for tracks to host a late model show. And so are you going to lose, tracks that have held races in the past, are they going to be able to hold them in the future? Are you going to limit yourself as to where you can run because tracks can't afford to host a race?
I'm going to say yes. I mean, I know that the Grand Rapids Speedway, we were going to host a World of Outlaw late model event. Now, prior to the season, I didn't pay as much of attention to, what series was better and this and that. Both of them had good drivers, but I watched both of them this year, and seems like the Lucas Oil late model series it's a step above right now. Mm-hmm. And then you take the World of Outlaws. I mean, Bloomquist is just really, he got one win in there, but he's been a non-factor. He was kind of the big calling card Madden, he dropped off the series, so both them two are out. So you have B. Shep, and then you have Ricky Weiss, and was it Lanigan? Is that who got third?
Lanigan, yeah,
Lanigan's
he's on
in there. Then Cade Dillard runs good. So there's a handful of guys that run good, but the Lucas Oil series, I mean, I think you just look at the top 5 there, and it's just a step above the top 5 in the World of Outlaws, in my opinion. Now, we looked at the numbers, and just based on the numbers, the Grand Rapids Speedway, in order to break even on the event with all the costs that it takes to go into that show, there had to be about 2,200 people there, okay? Well, now you start adding more money to that, because the Grand Rapids Speedway, in the history of the Grand Rapids Speedway, has never even come close to 2,000 people at any event. None of them. I mean, the only thing might have been an enduro. That's it. As far as a race, I'm talking the Wissota Classic. I'm talking like all kinds of stuff. They've never got close to 2,000. Well, then there's a couple things here that the World of Outlaws got going against them, okay? One is called Dirt Vision, all right? And the problem, I love it as a fan because you can have a subscription, you can watch all the races, but it kills your race program, because you take Grand Rapids let's say they're going to run on a Thursday night. Well, on Tuesday, they were going to run Superior, Thursday, Grand Rapids, Friday, Grand Forks, Saturday, Ogilvie, Sunday, Menominee. Well, if the weather's a little bit sketchy, the fans are going to be like, you know what? I got Dirt Vision. I'm going to stay home. I'm not driving from Duluth to Rapids. I'm not driving from the cities to Rapids. I'm just going to stay home. I can watch it online. The weather looks better this day. We're going to go. Well, if Dirt Vision was a pay-per-view option where they had to pay for it each race, then the fans would be making a decision. Well, I can pay for it online to watch it, or if I'm going to pay for it, I might as well just go. So that's number one. But number two, when they start adding more expense to the program, the track's the one who sees that. So in order to even break even on that deal, now you're going to add a few more $1,000s to that deal. And the smaller tracks, the ones that don't have if they're more in a rural area, they don't have a big fan base, there's going to be a lot of them looking at the numbers and saying, you know what, we just can't make it work this year. And I talked to a few promoters. They're all on the same page. Great for the drivers. I'm a driver, right? Great for the drivers, but not real good for the racetracks. And, we'll have to see how that goes in 2021. I'm not real impressed with some of the things the World Racing Group's doing, and we're going to talk about that here in a couple weeks, but one of them is their schedule change, what they got going on in January. That kind of pisses me off a little bit, to be honest, but we'll talk about that when the time comes.
Well, one thing, too, with the World of Outlaws, they like to do swings in certain geographic areas. I would think under this new format, a track that's going to host a World of Outlaw event, they're going to want some exclusive, they're going to want the next race to be X number of hours or X number of miles away. Because, just for example, this year, Seymour, Ogilivie Speedway in Seymour, Wisconsin had a race, and then the next night they raced at Plymouth. Well, that's probably 2-hour drive. So from a fan, are you going to get enough fans at two tracks that are that close together?
Yeah, and that's where you got to look at it from different angles. In order to make
a profit.
Yeah, that's where you got to look at it. You got to look at it from different angles, because on the track side, you're exactly right. They're like, I don't want another World of Outlaw race within 2-3 hours of me. It's got to be a little further away. We're trying to have our fan base here, right? But as a driver, I want to have 4 that are within like an hour, right? Because, it's just better for the driver. It's better for the series, kind of, because they get paid on the number of shows, so they want to make it easier for their drivers. So I get it. As a former driver, I get it, because you want all these races lumped right together, so there's less travel costs, less traveling, less driving time, less pain in the butt. But for the track side of things, that's where, and even fans, if a fan has a little bit of little extra money in their pocket, it's great to have a bunch right in an area, because they can hit all of them if they choose to. But for the tracks, oh man, it just depends on what track it is. Some tracks are doing well enough financially where it's like, hey, this ain't a big deal. We'll make it work. But the tracks that are, a little bit more, kind of not really getting ahead financially, the ones that are kind of treading water, that's a lot of risk. And now it's already a lot of risk to have that show, but now they added more risk, and, we'll see how it works out.
Yeah.
So Bert, talking about the late models there, and World of Outlaw specifically, I saw a little news on one of the World of Outlaw late model drivers.
Yeah, I just saw this tonight when I was looking around online, and Black Sunshine, Mr. Scott Bloomquist is gonna, for the first time ever, be in an IMCA modified. He's raced a modified before, but never an IMCA modified. Obviously, he won the 100. I believe it was 100,000 to win at Batesville several years ago. I have the diecast in my collection. And then he also did race at Mississippi Thunder Speedway one time in a modified. But he will be racing at Duel in the Desert in mid-November. So we've talked about how he may be slipping a little bit, but he's still willing to try new things. He's actually going to be racing. I wrote it down. Racing a car from Zane Devil Bliss, and he must build his own chassis because it's a Devil Bliss chassis. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Well, here's the over and under. I don't know how many shows. They got multiple shows out there. This is going to be on XR, and there's already, they have IMCA mods, sport mods, and IMCA stock cars. They already have 460 cars pre-registered for this event. So that's big numbers out there. That's crazy. But over and under on how many shows is he going to miss because he got stuck in the casino? That might be his whole reason for running Vegas. It's like, Scott, come run my car. It's right by Vegas. We're in Vegas here. Lots of casinos in Vegas. So over and under. Do you think he'll miss a show because he was more focused on the casino than the racetrack?
I'll say he makes it to all the shows, but I see where you're coming from.
We'll find out, and if he does win, we know where that money's going. It's just a matter of which casino's getting it, because he likes to gamble a little bit. So I guess we'll find out. But pretty cool to see. It's good for that series that he's going to be out there, because that'll pull in a few more views and a few more people. But let's talk about the wins. We talked about Kyle Larson a little bit. We mentioned he won 12 of 24. He has 41 wins on dirt this year out of 81 shows. It's just over 50% win rate in everything that he's been in. And then you add up, and we'll have to do this at some point here at the end of the year, but how many seconds and thirds? So how many podium finishes? That's something that I'm going to have to take a look at. Does he have out of 81 shows? It's astonishing, right? It's astonishing. So would he, in your mind, is there even a question if he'd be leading the World of Outlaw Championship points right now if he ran every show?
Oh, yeah, there's no question. I mean, it wouldn't even be close.
Right. So the next closest, I think, isn't it Sweet's got 8 wins? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's only 4 less. And he ran 48 out of 49 as compared to 12 out of 24. Yeah, I like them numbers. Now, looking at the late models, you got Bishop, and Jimmy Owens. Both of them have the most wins in their respective series, and that's why their point lead is just, catastrophically huge. Jimmy Owens, of course, won. He's now, even though they have one race left, but he is officially the 2020 Lucas Oil Late Model Series champion. So congratulations to him. And Brandon Shepard, they might as well write him the check now, because that's all but over. But, I want to talk about a local guy, okay? So that's enough on the National Series. A guy that struggled, right? He was right there in the power rankings, on the One to Go show, and then for kind of the bulk of the summer, right? July, part of August, we're like, I don't know what's happened to this guy. He's like off the pace. Patdoar fell right out of the top 10. Like, he was kind of a non-factor for quite a while there. Come into invitational season, and if you're watching the show and you don't know what we're talking about, in our region, the Wissota region, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, every year starting Labor Day weekend, there's an invitational season where every show is like a big invite, and the track points are all done, and it's kind of we call it the invitational season. Well, he has the most wins out of all the late model guys at invite time with 4. He won both days of Hibbing Raceway's Labor Day shootout. He won the Russ Larson Classic up at the Gondiclaw Speedway in Superior, Wisconsin. In this past weekend, he won the Fall Classic in Ogilvie. So Patdoar, 4 wins invitational season. I don't know if he's going to Mississippi Thunder or not. He voiced a little displeasure about their, the changes they made to the engine rules. But a great way to cap off the 2020 season for the Double One Express.
Yeah, I think as soon as he dropped off our top 10 list, I think that's when he got into victory lane, it was shortly after that. So you made him a little angry, I think.
Here's the deal. I mean, we call people out. They rise to the occasion. They don't snivel in the corner and cry. We call them out. They come back and win. So if you're a driver that's struggling, shoot us a text. Well, no, I'm not scared. I'll call you out, for sure. And there's a few of you that I got in mind right now, but we'll talk about that as we approach the coming season. But, great show here tonight. And, what are you doing this weekend? I mean, there's not a lot of racing going on in our area. Really, the only thing is Mississippi Thunder, which is a little bit of a drive for both of us. What are you excited for this weekend?
Well, obviously, the Dirt Track World Championship is probably the thing I'm most excited about racing-wise. So, but I may tune into, I at least watch the highlights of the Sprint Car Series. Past years, I would have never said that, but they actually put on a really good show.
They do. And Keith is going to be so happy that you said that, right? Because Jeff is a huge late model guy. Keith is a huge sprint car guy. They're always going at it. But, the entertainment value of the World of Outlaw Sprint Cars, I mean, the hype, their announcer is amazing. They have, like, before the races, they got the music playing, just kind of gets that blood flowing. It gets you pumped up. So I'll be watching that. I'm definitely going to watch the Dirt Track World Championship. That's going to be on Lucas Oil Racing TV. And another one that is going to be on Racing Dirt, I will watch the pumpkin race down at Mississippi Thunder, because they always put on a good show down there. They got some great mod racing, great Midwest. They call them USRA B mods, I think is what they call them. And then, of course, the final late model race here of the whole year. Patdoar right now is number 1 in our power rankings. Right now, AJ Demos in second, Jesse Glenz is third, Jeffrey Massengill fourth, James Nitro Giassi in fifth. And out of that whole group in the top 5, I know Giassi, I guess I don't know if he's going to head down there, but he has a win down there at Mississippi Thunder. Mm-hmm. Glenz and Massengill are not going. Door's kind of leaning towards not going, and I'm wondering if AJ Demo is going to go. So there might be a final shakeup here with one show, one weekend, because it's a doubleheader, 2 complete shows. So I'll be watching a little bit of racing from the comfort of my own home here. And Bert, it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to the next one, 2 away, and we're going to have 1 year in the books. Yeah, we better get Puka on for that one. We're going to have to get Puka on there, because it's not the same when I say it, but Puka always says this. Folks, thanks for joining us on the One to Go show. Go out there and be your dream.